evening, everybody, and how are we all doing today? It is Sunday, the 1st of February, 2026. We're back here in the podding shed to discuss greenhouses and polytunnels, whether they are worth the investment. That's coming up in tonight's main topic. So how it works is I'm going to ask you the question, or the main question is a greenhouse or polytunnel worth investing in? I want to hear your answers about that and what your thoughts are. There's no right or wrong answers, as always. We're a friendly bunch. We encourage anybody who is watching in the afraid to say anything, please do come forward. We don't bite. We're not expecting people to come up with everything correctly, but we want to hear your answers. Before that, let's see who we've actually got out there. We've got Adrian saying, hi, Richard and all. We've got Stuart saying, evening, Richard and the Veg Army. Hope you're all safe after the storms last week. Nathan is there saying, good evening, everyone. We've got Turbo Stream saying, good evening, Veg Podcasters. Good evening to you. Kate is there saying, good evening, Veg Army. Good evening to you. Scott is there saying, good evening, all. Good evening to you. Anna Jones, good evening, gardeners. Good evening to you. Gary is there. Good evening, all. Hope you are all well. Good evening to you. Ballycillian Allotment Man is there. Evening, all. Good evening to you. Hargrave Gas, evening, all. Hope everyone has had a great week. Indeed, I hope you have too. Hello to you. Nicola, evening, one and all. Nice to see a little sunshine the last 2 days. We haven't had sunshine here. We've had non-stop rain. Even if we have had rail and hail. Good evening to you. Turbo Stream, sunshine? Where? Not here, just grey and wet still. I'll talk about that in just a moment. Digwell, yo dudes, how's it going? He's getting down with the kids. Chitty Kate, hi Richard, hi everyone. We don't have a greenhouse or polytunnels. I'm interested to hear what everyone has to say. Well, that does feel like the right opportunity to start this conversation off. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, put your hands up if you have a greenhouse or if you have a polytunnel. Now, I've been wondering about if there's any definition on what the difference between or how to define the difference between a greenhouse and a polytunnel. And for me, I think a polytunnel is generally made of plastic, or a greenhouse would generally have glass, or it's more solid. Polytunnel is generally a bit more flexible. And in my case, I have got several greenhouses. I have got my greenhouse at home. I have got my potting shed, which is a greenhouse cum shed. I have got 2 greenhouses on the allotment, although only one of them is glazed. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later as well. Just keep checking over on Instagram. Toby Clark has joined. Welcome along. Lovely to see you. I've got to say, over on Instagram, I don't know what they've done, but it looks a lot better than it has done in the past. What else was I going to say? Yeah, so I have several greenhouses. In the past, I have had polytunnels, the cheap £100 ones that you would buy from Wilco's or places like that. My advice when it comes to those is do not waste your money. Invest in decent polytunnels. The reason being is I found those cheap ones get blown over really easy, break so easy. They just not worth it. I have seen people who get away with them, don't get me wrong, but for me, I don't think they are worth it. But like anything, you pay for what you get. One of the best things I can say is you pay as much money as you can afford. Turbo Stream says, I'm not convinced the expenditure would be worth it for me, re a greenhouse or polytunnel. Everyone's different, so hopefully we might either persuade you or make your mind up depending on what the outcome is. Digwell's put his hands up. I didn't know you had a greenhouse, in all honesty. Ballycillian has 3 polytunnels. Nicola, I've just bought both, but neither are up. This is a time of year when I feel greenhouses and polytunnels really come into their own. It's a little bit early unless you've got a heated greenhouse to get any plants, any seedlings outside. but I certainly find they're very, very useful for getting vegetables off to an early start. Things like winter lettuce can be grown inside a greenhouse, things like that. Over on Instagram, just quickly, Toby Clark says evening veg legends, and Scott has also joined in over there as well. And Lottie Shepard's put his hands up. Stuart Jackson says I have both at school, but I let greenhouse at home. I have a greenhouse at home, I think that is. Highgrave puts thumbs up to greenhouse. Gary says greenhouse, all sorts of rigid plastic with aluminium flames. Excellent. Scott has put his hands up as well. Turbo Stream says, I would be worried every winter that they would suffer damage. Fair point. So I'm going to get into that in just a moment. Stuart Jackson, the one piece of advice I would give when buy either, buy the best you can afford. Again, I agree with that. Turbo Stream says, then they are cold in the winter, too hot in the summer. We're going to get into that as well. Digwell, polytunnels are covered in flexible polyethylene plastic. Greenhouses are rigid and often glazed with glass or polycarbonate, offering better heat retention and durability. That's kind of where I was going, but I've got a story about that as well. Stuart says, before I owned a greenhouse, I wasted my money in the little plastic cold frames which blow away more than once. Yeah, exactly. Idaho has joined and says, hello, Richard. Hello to you. So let's get into it. Now, what was one of the things that came up? What did Turbo Stream say? Worried about they would blow away in the winter. That is a valid thing. And it's the same as a shed. It's the same as anything building that you might have outside. There is a chance that it could get blown away. And this is why I always say, buy the best that you can afford. But also, you've got to make sure that the base that they sit on is strong as well. They're secured to the ground. So my greenhouses, I've put massive concrete blocks and I have drilled the greenhouses down onto those concrete blocks. They're not going to blow away. So it's a valid concern, but it can actually be sorted out quite easily. Now, because of rules on allotments about cement, my greenhouses are not cemented into the ground. I have drilled them into paving slabs, and trust me, nothing is going to move that at all. So if you are worried about it blowing away, there are ways around it. Too hot in the summer and too cold in the winter. Now, we could, of course, when it comes to winter, heat our greenhouses. That can be expensive, though. I've got a diesel heater, which I'm hoping to heat one of my greenhouses with. But it can be expensive, yes, to heat a greenhouse. So it's not really something that we want to do, but it is an option. However, unheated greenhouses just offer a bit more protection. They help us, and this is one of the reasons that I think greenhouses are good or polytunnels are good. They help us start our crops off a little bit earlier. They are going to be a little bit warmer than outside, so you get your crops started earlier. You also protect your crops over winter. So some crops that are less hardy than others can go in a greenhouse. Citrus, for an example, they will cope a bit better with winter, so you actually get your plants through the winter. You also get things like I'm just checking through my notes. You get earlier crops and things like tomatoes, courgettes, and things like that. Grown in a greenhouse or polytunnel just gives you an early start. So yes, they can be too cold in winter, and in the middle of summer, yes, they can be too hot. Often people will put shade cloth up inside their greenhouse, inside their polytunnel, just to keep that heat down. It's not hard work at all. I personally don't find it gets too hot, but that's because I'm quite lucky, really. But there are things we can do to control temperature inside a greenhouse. Don't let that put you off. Gary says, I had 2 3x3 meters out sunny polytunnels, both blew away. I tried my best to tie it down, but too windy. I have a third in the shed, but don't want to put it up. So I did the same on my old allotment. I got some of these 3-meter polytunnels, and it not even a strong storm, a strong gust of wind, strong blowy day, and they got blown all over the place. Now there are things. So the advice when it comes to those cheap polytunnels, I say, is that you sink them into the ground and you put sandbags around the skirt to weigh it down. But even then, it's a fight. It's a fight. I'm not a fan of those. You hear me say that time and time again. When it comes to polytunnels, my recommendation is buy the best you can afford. Buy a proper aluminium frame, a proper polytunnel, and you should be okay. But those cheap ones, just not worth it. Adrian says, I have a 60-foot polytunnel, but have never put it up as it sits in the barn. I think that's 60 foot anyway. Interesting. Anna Jones says, I had a mini greenhouse made with that green stuff that the cheap polys come from. It disintegrated in 1 year. Dreadful stuff. Yep. Again, I'm with you. This boils down to buy the best that you can afford. Something I will say all the time when it comes to greenhouses and polytunnels. Ballycillian says, I couldn't grow all year round without the polytunnels. They are fitted out with solar fans and heaters. So again, about 10 years ago, when I moved into this house, one of the things I wanted was a greenhouse. I wanted to have somewhere that could benefit the growing all year round, enable me to grow more food all year round. So I got the greenhouse, I built it, and within 1 year, I was loving it. Straight away, I could see the benefits. We were growing more food, things like salad leaves, herbs, just all year round in the greenhouse. We couldn't quite do it the same way without it. And I'm saying that because a greenhouse doesn't need heating. Heaters help, but they don't need heating. So I can't remember how much I think my greenhouse cost me £70 brand new because I used Tesco Club Card vouchers. But I don't know how much a good greenhouse is these days, actually. How much is a good greenhouse? These days? Turbo Stream says, I do tend to sow direct. For some reason, it suits me better than in modules. What have we got? Scott says, I have a greenhouse but built my own to fit into the space I had, so it didn't take away useful space in the garden. Now, actually, it's one of the things I have made a note. A greenhouse or a polytunnel, they do need to be sited in the right position because really you want the benefit that they get the sun all day long. So wherever you're going to site them has got to be in full sun. That does tend to mean they take up prime growing space in many cases. And that could mean that you're not growing vegetables outside. It has to be a greenhouse. That is something you have to work out if you are prepared to make the sacrifice. But I still think they are worthwhile investment. I do think the benefits outweigh them, but that's ultimately what we're going to discuss tonight. But they do take up quite a bit of space. And if you don't have much space, you might have a small garden, then it may not be something that you can afford the space. You might be able to afford a greenhouse, just can't afford the space. Over on Instagram quickly, Young Jern Klitz has joined and Plot 13A has joined. Welcome along. Is a greenhouse or polytunnel worth investing in is the question I'm asking tonight. I have more to say on that, and I've forgotten it. Turbo Stream says, my plot neighbour has a cheapy greenhouse and it's still standing, so perhaps I'm wrong or he got lucky. I suspect he just put some effort into making sure it is strong enough, sighting it and doing everything he could to ensure it just coped with the strong winds on it. Gary has said, I like Sue and Lucy take on the preference for direct sowing. Gave me some things to think about. They were talking about their podcast on yesterday, weren't they? The Talking Heads. I can't wait to see them in a couple of weeks. I'm really looking forward to that. Hargrave Gas, I've lost a few cheap plastic mini greenhouses, but the glass ones I have now has proper foundations and is probably more stable than my house. Yeah. Again, this is a point. It needs strong foundations to really be worthwhile. And that's not hard to do. Not hard to do. A few paving slabs and screw them down onto that. One of the things I was going to say, I remembered what I was going to say talking about glass. So my greenhouse at home, when I brought it, we had planned to have children. So I didn't want a glass greenhouse because I wanted my kids to be out there playing football, and I didn't want damage coming to the greenhouse. Unfortunately, we didn't have kids, and that decision, I've still kept that greenhouse. I am thinking a glass greenhouse would probably be better, probably cope with the wind, that big my words up, probably cope more with or be warmer during the winter if it was a glass greenhouse. Ballyseen, a year ago, a storm destroyed a 15-year-old cover. I replaced it for £45. Others lost glass from the greenhouse and can't afford to reglaze. That comes up to something I was going to talk about as well. My greenhouses on the allotment. I've got two. Granddad's greenhouse and a sergeant, as I call them. So Granddad's greenhouse is glazed with glass. It's your standard glass panels, 2 foot by 2 foot. So it's nice and easy to get hold of glass. I keep an eye on Facebook Marketplace, and I try and keep hold of any spare glass when it becomes available. Really easy to do. Really easy to do. But the other one, Sergeant, the glass panels on that are different size. They're an odd size. And I have struggled to get hold of glass panels specifically for that, unless I went and spent a fortune. What I've decided to do instead, I'm going to glaze it with the solid plastic you would find on a polytunnel. So it's going to be a polytunnel with a solid frame is what I'm looking to do with that greenhouse. I just want to share that because that was something I mentioned earlier as a bit of a story that could come into play. Hargrave says, I spent a lot on my greenhouse. It won't ever pay for itself in terms of extending the growing season, but it's well worth every penny as it's my happy place in the garden. Again, one of the things I love about having a greenhouse, and it's probably the same for a polytunnel. As I said, the polytunnels I've had in the past have not been successful. But if you've got a polytunnel, I still think they are a worthwhile investment. I keep thinking I should get a polytunnel on the allotment. But one of the things that I've said is when it is raining, when it is miserable outside, I like to go in the greenhouse. I like to be indoors, but still gardening, especially on the allotment, because it just means I can still do stuff indoors. Idaho, I have a proper greenhouse. Previous owners had it built and never used it. I started a few seedlings in there last spring, but in the summer it got like a furnace. Doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me at all. Tammy Stream says, I see the point of greenhouses, but I don't tend to grow stuff that needs protection. I don't grow tomatoes or overwinter things like chilies. Fair enough, fair enough. Tomatoes are actually a good example of a crop that really benefits from a greenhouse. Now, there's going to be some debate about the flavour of greenhouse versus outdoor grown tomatoes. But one of the biggest problems that we might get with tomatoes as growers is, of course, tomato blight, potato blight. It's a big problem. We didn't get any last year, admittedly, but most years we get blight in one form or another. It is a big, 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 big problem. And most growers are the same. It's a fungal disease that travels via, that's a bit complicated. But basically, if you get wet, humid period at a certain temperature, you're likely to get blight. Well, greenhouse, you are less likely to get blight. So having a greenhouse, if you're growing things like tomatoes, can also benefit because it protects those crops a little bit better in the prime growing season. It means something like tomatoes, you can always get tomatoes. Idaho says, I'm thinking I will be using my greenhouse in spring and fall to extend the seasons. And that is ultimately what they are for. They are there for extending the seasons. They are there to grow things in the winter as well, if you can. There's lots and lots of reasons going on there. Keep an eye over on Instagram. Nothing going on over there. Time Stream says, my late mum had a greenhouse in my now garden. She complained it got too hot, so gave it away. It's true. Greenhouses do get hot. The greenhouse I brought was a Rhino, which is a very good mic. Chili Cake says, any tips for knowing if you actually want one? I was going to get a flimsy one to test the location against self-facing fence near the tree. Not convinced it will get enough light. So, any tips on knowing if you actually want one? I don't know. What you're saying is you want to test the theory. I guess what you could do is buy one of those flimsy ones, pull it in that location, just make sure it is weighed down incredibly well so it doesn't get blown away. And then just see how you get on. Now, it's not necessarily a fair test because I find like the 4-tier shelf type, they get very humid inside those. But it gives you an idea. It gives you an idea if it is something you want to do, I guess. So give it a go, but just be prepared that it will get blown around. Try and make it as stable as you possibly can. Nicola says the Rhino isn't cheap. The size 8 by 18 foot would be about $5,000 new. I paid 15,000 including delivery from eBay. Brilliant. Turbo Stream says, I think it depends on what you grow to decide if the greenhouse is worth it. So that is, again, a valid point. It does depend on what you grow, how much you want to grow. But it's a tool. I think this is a key thing to remember. A greenhouse is a tool. It's something we can use to make the most out of all our growing spaces. I mean, I wouldn't be without a greenhouse, I'll be honest. And as I said, my greenhouse cost me £70 because I use club card vouchers, but I wouldn't be without it. In fact, here's a tip for anybody. If you are looking for a greenhouse, if you are looking for it, Facebook Marketplace, you often find people giving them away for free. And if you don't want to take the plunge and buy them, that might be a way to find out if it is suitable. Get one for free. You may have to dismantle it, is the only thing. They're not hard to dismantle, not hard in the slightest, but give it a try. And you can get greenhouses for free. Maybe a bit of glaze, and again, you can find glass for free as well. Stuart says, we found out at school with the polytunnel, pay extra to have it up properly. Again, I'm not disagreeing with that. It does need to be done properly. And Bunny Sin says it depends on what you grow. I couldn't grow grapes, melons, cucumbers, or chilies, etc., without my tunnels. Again, I don't disagree with that. So I'm on the south coast of the UK, as I'm sure you all know about now. And I do grow grapes outside. I do grow cucumbers and chilies. Melons are not so successful outside, but in a greenhouse, we really do get a lot of benefits from it. So again, I totally agree with you. It does depend on what you grow, but it does open up the possibility of growing more items, I think. Melons are a really good example, actually, of something that you can get outdoor type melons, but they grow a lot better inside a greenhouse. Tabo Stream says the price does pop me off when I venture to a garden centre. The prices are eye-watering. Yeah, garden centre prices are expensive for greenhouses, but they do generally get good ones. Digwell says, I don't understand why anyone would want a glass greenhouse. It is less thermo-efficient than a polycarb, so costs a lot more money, more to heat. So the reason that my plastic greenhouse, as I call it, in the garden at home, isn't polycarb, isn't twin wall polycarb. It is a single piece of plastic, basically. It's not very heat efficient at all. Glass is better, but twin wall polycarbonate is, of course, a better insulator. After a while, though, twin wall polycarbonate does fade. It does get a little bit brittle. I mean, glass can get brittle as well, but the twin wall polycarbonate. After a while, you may have to look at replacing it. It's something to bear in mind when you are thinking of buying a greenhouse, buying a polytunnel is in a few years' time, particularly with polytunnels, you may have to replace the plastic. You may have to replace certain things. So something to think about as well if you are looking to buy a greenhouse, ongoing maintenance costs. Ballysean says, I prefer outdoor tomatoes, but always grow a backup in a polytunnel. And Digwell says, tomatoes get damaged at temperatures above 32 degrees C. So many losers in hot greenhouses. And yes, outdoor tomatoes taste better, in my honest opinion. Yep. Again, all true, all true. It's about how you manage the greenhouse. Scott says, I had a polytunnel on the allotment. I was thinking it was last sighted making its way across the North Sea. Yeah. Exactly right. Exactly right. Idaho says, yes, I would buy a flimsy one and tie it down. This to Chili Kate. Stake it down. Use more tie downs and stakes than you can imagine. Yeah, absolutely. I heard the Russian Shadow Fleet are trailing it. Ballysean says, the main thing with a polytunnel is to withstand storms. The cover has to be fitted drum tight. Yeah. Again, it has to be done right. They're not easy things to do if you want them to last. And it says, seen a few polycarbs on YouTube. They look very smart and strong too. They are absolutely nothing wrong with polycarbs. Again, it's a bit of a decision whether you want polycarb, plastic, or glass. Glass is cheap, easy to replace. Polycarb is a bit more expensive, but it has that heat retention. It does hold on to heat a little bit better. Completely up to you. Completely up to you. Polytunnels are generally cheaper, but again, I've got to say, you want to buy the best that you can afford. Digwell says, my 6x4 polycarb greenhouse costs less than £1 a day to heat from January to March. 360 electric fan heater with a thermostat set at 18C. So that is very interesting, isn't it? It's not as expensive as what we think. Well, hang on. Costs less than £1 a day. I was going to say that's not very expensive, but actually that it can be quite pricey. It's 30 quid a month. Do you need a heater? If you've got a greenhouse, here's a question for anybody that has a greenhouse or polytunnel. Do you feel you need a heater? I know that's very subjective because it's going to very much depend on where you are in the country. That very much depends where you are in the country. Polycrub, not polycarb, a difference. What's the difference? What's the difference then? I've heard of polycarbonate, but polycrab, not heard of that. Polycarb. I've not heard of that. So I'm intrigued what's going on there. Over on Instagram, John Jar says, our allotment, the badgers have ripped open a couple of polytunnels. That's a fair point, actually. That's something I didn't think of because I've not had that myself. But badgers ripping open polytunnels, it can, again, this boils down to what I was saying earlier, is that if you have a polytunnel or a greenhouse, you have got ongoing maintenance costs. You do have to, every now and then, replace things. So something to think of that. Something to think about. Digwell says, I need a heater for the 2,000 or so seedlings. Diesel heater is what I'm using, or going to be using once I get power out there. Ballysin says, yes, but just keep it frost-free. My tunnel's heated with solar heaters, so free. What are your solar heaters? What are your solar heaters? How do they work? Tell me more about that. Digwell says, storm strength from Shetland A, storm strength polycarbonate polytunnel designed in Shetland and built to withstand high wind speeds and the harshest of climates. Is that what you're talking about? Polycrab not polycarb. Is that the difference? Polycrub. Yeah. I think that's the difference. So they're designed to work in the Shetland Island, which, as we know, is very windy, very cold, not a huge amount of light in the winter either, but a lot of light in the summer. So if they're designed for that, they're probably going to work really well in your garden, your allotment, depending, again, where you are in the world. And how much light you actually get into your garden as well. I was sort of thinking out loud when thinking about this subject. Some people have gardens that don't get any light at the best of times. They're surrounded by houses and trees, so a lack of light makes having a greenhouse a bit pointless, really. Very pointless in many ways. But yeah, who here heats a greenhouse if you have a greenhouse? Is it just Digwell and Ballycillian? Are you the only two that have heaters in your greenhouses? Wouldn't surprise me at all. Wouldn't surprise me if that is the case. Just quick scratch. What have I got? What have I got? Well, one of the key things I think that we've got to remember when it comes to greenhouses is that they are a better environment. They're a controlled environment, rather, for growing certain plants on that they need. But light is often an overlooked subject. I think when we're starting seeds off, some of us have started seeds off already. You know, I've got my chilies, aubergines, and peppers, and they're doing great. They're absolutely doing great. But some people will start seeds off and not have enough light, and having light is probably more important in many ways than heat. And a greenhouse does supply light, but only if you've got enough during the day. So you may have to supplement them with grow lights as well. Digress is basically a tunnel made with bent polycarb sheets. Cost a fortune, but very, very highly recommended. Right. I know the very ones you're talking about now cost a fortune, but again, this is where it comes back to buy the best you can afford. Not everybody's going to be able to afford an expensive greenhouse, but buy the best you can afford. Ballycillian solar chicken coop heaters bought on Amazon for £20. I'll look into those. I'll look into those and see if we can get them. Idaho says, I haven't tried to heat my greenhouse. Hargrave says, I have an electric heater in my greenhouse, but rarely use it. Turbo Extreme says, my garden is north facing, so 4 months of the year there is limited sunlight. It does make a difference. Yeah. Digress says, love to see your running costs of the Chinese diesel heater. Needs to be up and running now, really. It does. I haven't got electric. I haven't got anything in my greenhouse that warrants heating at the moment either, and I'm worried that I tend to use so for me, the greenhouse I tend to use for protecting my overwintering plants. So my peach tree goes in the greenhouse, my grapevine goes in the greenhouse, my citrus trees and overwintering chilies and things like that, they go in the greenhouse. But if I heated those, they won't go into their dormancy, particularly the peach tree. So I do need to get the diesel heater up and running. I will say that. We've got to take that tree down before I can do that. I was hoping to show you that on one of the videos today, but I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But yeah, it needs to be up and running now, really, to get the benefit of it. But where we are here on the south coast, it's not actually that cold. We haven't had a frost for quite a few weeks now, so we're not doing too bad here. It's not too cold. I'm not saying I'm going to stick my plants outside, but in a couple of weeks' time, some of my chilies might be able to go out there. What have we got? Stuart says, I only heat my greenhouse if I run out of space indoors, as it becomes expensive to keep it frost-free. Digger says, I'm sure they use about 1 litre of diesel a day or more. Said I haven't fired mine up to test it. It really again depends on the heat and what have you. Amanda says, lovely to catch you live. I've been watching back most recently. My plot neighbour has been getting on very well with a little paraffin heater in his poly over winter. So that's another thing we can look at as well, actually. Heating a greenhouse or polytunnel, the different methods. A paraffin heater, I've tried a paraffin heater in the past. I didn't get on with it. Plus, the idea of a naked flame, I'll be honest, it scares me a little, having a flame inside a greenhouse. But electric, I'm a bit more comfortable using electric heaters. I'm fine with that because I know what I'm doing with electric, not being cocky or anything, but I'm pretty good with electrics. But then electric heaters, I've got the diesel heater I'll talk about as well. I'm trying to think of the other forms of heating, electric or a log burner, but again, it's a naked flame. So Digwell says, do not run a diesel heater off the mains. It needs to be 12-volt battery. If there is a power cut and the heater misses out on its cooling cycle and the control module melts. So, valid point, but I have got a battery backup. So my diesel heater is actually designed to run off a 240-volt supply anyway, 240 or 12-volt. Got the option for both. If there is a power cut, the heater will just turn off. It is dependent on that, so don't worry about that. But it is a valid point. Some diesel heaters do need a 12-volt battery. If there is a power cut and the heater misses out on its cooling cycles, the control module melts. But mine's actually designed. I've not got a cheap one. Mine's actually designed with that in mind and designed quite well. Bally Ceiling says Belfast has a nice ice warning starting tonight to -2 to -9. I was just thinking, how cold has it got in my potting shed recently? Because I've got a what's it called? A Govee. Oh, wrong one. It's a Govee like thermometer and hydrometer tells me how much. Etc. etc. tells me the temperature's going on. So at the moment, I can bring it up. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it very well, but it's telling me in my potting shed it's 8.5 degrees C at the moment with a 91% relative humidity. And the temperature over the last what have we got? Temperature over the last day, we have got highs of, well, it's been up to 11.2 and a low. I know it's been warmer than that. Here we go. It's down now. So the highest it's been has been nearly 18 degrees C, and the lowest it's been is 6.2. So if you're keeping it frost free, we don't need it. We don't need frost free, but that's pretty good. That's pretty good to be keeping it that warm. And if we're going for the week, again, highs of 20.9, lows of 6. So we're not doing too bad here on the south coast. Digwell says, best put the diesel heater outside too, unless it's a Robesco or other well-known mic. Yeah, I mean, my diesel heater, it's basically designed around a toolbox, so it's nice and easy, but it has an exhaust which of course emits. This is another reason I don't like naked flames inside a greenhouse. Carbon monoxide, where it burns fuel, burns the oxygen, and it could make it very very toxic if we were to go in there. So I want my diesel heater will be outside, and a duct going into the greenhouse to warm up the greenhouse is how it's going to be set up. Excuse me. But valid point. You've got to be careful. And it's the same, as I say, with paraffin heaters. They're known as well, or log burners. If they're sealed, they could burn the oxygen in the air, firstly create carbon dioxide, and then when it searches for oxygen, it turns that carbon dioxide to carbon monoxide, and that can kill you in minutes. It's nasty, nasty stuff. And so, again, it's one of the reasons that I did sort of say I was erring more towards an electric heater than anything else. Just needed a quick swig over there. Over on Instagram, Plant Man Saul has joined. Mr. Saul Walker himself. Lovely to see you, buddy. Hope you are well. We were talking about you earlier. Lovely to see you. So, coming back to, is a greenhouse worth it or not? Is there anybody out there who's got any questions about a greenhouse or a polytunnel that they would like to ask? You know, as always, this is open to everybody else to share anything that they want to say or anything they want to add. Please do let us know any questions that you have about the greenhouse or anything like that. What have we got? Anything else? Anything else? I think I read Belfast has a nice warning of -2 to -9, and so on. One of the things I did want to say, so I love going in a greenhouse. This weekend, it has been another wet, miserable day. Weekend. It hasn't stopped raining. The ground is saturated, floods everywhere. You name it, we've got it. But going in the greenhouse, and even the potting shed for that matter, it meant I've still been able to garden. I've been able to spend time in the greenhouse doing things like seed sowing, potting on and pricking out, things like that, while it has still been wet outside. So we've not lost anything on that front. Which is great benefit of over having a greenhouse or a polytunnel, is it does mean even if it's wet outside, you can still garden. I don't know if anybody else is like this, but my time in the garden on the weekend when I'm not working is very, very precious to me. Very precious to me. And I want to make the most of it. There's nothing more annoying than saying, oh, going into work, or like on a Thursday, I always ask everybody in my team what they're doing at the weekend. And often my answer would always be, I'm going to spend some time on the allotment. Nothing more annoying than going in and saying, yeah, couldn't do that because of the rain. Never say it, because I've always got the greenhouse to go into instead. Highgrave says, any tips on cleaning glazed panels? So, yeah, I try and clean my glass, my panels, several times throughout the year, and I don't use anything other than a bucket of water and a moderately stiff brush. So I've got this brush for cleaning the car. It looks like a bit like a broom for sweeping up with, but it is designed for cleaning the car, so the bristles aren't as tough. And I just dip that in the water, go around the glass panels on the outside, and give it all a good wash down with that. Keeps on top of the algae and things like that. Doesn't take too long, and gets rid of any detritus and stuff like that. I don't like to use chemicals. Don't like to use chemicals at all. But there are chemicals out there designed for it. I don't like to use it at all, so I don't use them. Anybody else got any tips on cleaning glazed panels? Digwell says, many YouTuber channels would not have a polytunnel if they were not sponsored by First Tunnels, etc. Yeah. I mean, we're not sponsored by First Tunnels, so we can't react to that. But I have to say, I would always have a greenhouse. Always have a greenhouse or polytunnel, because they are such a good thing, in my opinion. Stuart says, soapy water to clean the greenhouse, natural soap, of course. Again, not a problem using natural soap. Anything like that does the job. I don't want to use anything that's going to be contaminating the plants around my greenhouse. I've got to breathe in. I've got to eat that food that we produce. So it has to be natural. As I said, I do mine 3-4 times a year just with a brush. I was going to do it this weekend for you as one of the missions, but just couldn't get it done. On that note, I have made the cook-along video, but it took an hour to render. It's only a 5-minute video because I said last week, my main PC has had a bit of a problem with it. I've got to rebuild everything. So I've fallen back to my older PC, and it's a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. It's taken forever to render any videos. So I haven't been able to produce the mission videos, and there was a lot of missions. So I'll show you those next week, hopefully. Instead, we've got, well, hopefully I'll be able to do the cook-along video. We'll have a look in a minute. Rob's Attic has joined. Is that Rob's allotment as well? Is that the same person? Good evening, all. Been listening to the football. Lovely to see you. We got, yeah, it must be Rob. Must be Rob. Bunny Sin says, I agree, Digwell. Tunnel generators and electric bikes, etc. They're meant to be gardening channels. See, I've got no problem with gardening tunnels and generators. I can see where you might want one on an allotment. Bikes, not necessarily, but that's not for me. That's not for me. Don't really do YouTube that much. I'm a podcaster first and foremost, so we've got things going on. Let me try another. Is he on the wrong? Has he got several names? That's what he's doing? Digwa says, I leave my greenhouse panels dirty until I need the sun in April. The algae, etc., helps with the insulating. Then I clean with black olive soap, Maris, Faber, Savon, Nor, and liquid. Yeah, again, that's one way of doing it. I don't want the algae on my greenhouse over winter personally. It is right, it insulates it, of course. But I want light going into the greenhouse to make the most of any light or any plants that is in there, keep them sustained. As I said, things like lettuce and stuff like that will do great in there over winter. Obviously, you would have seen my greenhouse. Yeah, Digwell. I do actually watch some of your videos from time to time, though, Digwell. I think I've said before, I don't watch enough YouTube. I want to watch more, but I don't have enough hours in a day. I really don't. I've said that time and time again, haven't I? I want to watch more YouTube videos. Don't have enough hours in a day. I don't like playing on my phone at work, so I only do it. Belly Soon says, I know, Richard, but it's a different generator every week, and the last one is always the best. Right, with you now. Unfortunately, that's the way these it's difficult, isn't it? Because YouTubers are all about trying to get the money. I mean, money items. I mean, I'm going to press event in a couple of weeks' time, which is so press event is an opportunity for people like myself, people in the garden media, to get in front of brands, or the brands get in front of us, and we go and have conversations. A lot of this stuff behind me has came from a lot of these events. They've been given to me because they want them displayed and talked about and stuff like that. So we're all guilty of it, but yeah, I've always tried to be careful of not repeating myself. I get excited about one product and I stick with that one product. Yeah. Anna Jones says, car washing brush attached to a hose is very good for greenhouse cleaning. Yep, again, that's similar to what I use, a car washing brush, but I don't attach it to a hose, although I could now, thinking about it. I just dip it in a bucket and go from that. Only joking, buddy. No, you're right, though. You are right. I subscribe to 300 channels. In no way I can watch every video. Exactly. This is the trouble. You can watch two. You wouldn't have time to watch them all, would you? Everyone likes a freebie. Yeah, exactly. Rob says it must be costing some of these suppliers a fortune to supply all these free gifts they are giving out. It's marketing at the end of the day. Marketing. Um, it comes out of the marketing budget. So they got certain things. I'm talking at the moment with a grow light company. So they're doing things. It's all about marketing. But again, before I move on from that, I'm of the belief it's not a free gift. We have to earn it. That's what I say. Digwell says, I promote items on my channel, but only ones that I would 100% buy myself and use. Certainly not an e-bike, etc. Yeah, again, totally with you. Again, would I use it? Yes. Would I pay for it? Yes. Would my listeners benefit from it? That's how it should be. But we're going off on a tangent a bit there, aren't we? Yeah. Yeah. Right. This feels like a good opportunity to share with you uh, a video of what I was doing. Now, this is going to be a little bit tricky to do because normally I do other things. This is it this one? Yeah. This is you want me to cook Welsh rarebit, Welsh rarebit. So I've made a little video. As I said, this did take a long time to process, so it's taken a while. But I'll share it with you, and then we'll come back and carry on the discussion. Okay, so this week's recipe is Welsh rarebit. Invented in the 18th century, or the first discovery of it anyway. It dates back to the 18th century where it was called Welsh rabbit. Nobody quite knows why it changed its name to rarebit or why it was called originally rabbit. Either way, it's basically a posh cheese on toast. So let's make it. So first things first, we're going to make a roux. I've melted about a tablespoon of butter. As you can see, it's nice and boiling. And we're going to add in a tablespoon of flour. And we're just going to cook that through to make a nice roux. Okay, so the roux is made, and we're going to add in a little bit at a time some cream. Basically, we're making a nice bechamel sauce here. Now, traditionally, you would actually use in Welsh rarebit beer or ale or even stout, something like a good Guinness, instead of cream. But I'm using cream because, well, I fancied it. I didn't fancy any booze in this one today. But if you were going to do it the proper way, it would include some sort of alcoholic drink. Anyway, we've got 400 millilitres of cream to use. The reason we add it all a bit at a time is we don't want it to cloud together too much. Well, that seems to be making a nice bechamel sauce. So we're going in a few more ingredients. First of all, a good dollop of Worcestershire sauce. Love Worcestershire sauce. Don't use it enough. We're also going in with some good Dijon mustard. Again, something else I absolutely love cooking with, using. And some good cheese. I'm using red Leicester here. Don't skimp on the cheese. It is an important part. We're just going to give that a good mix. Make it all combined. As you can see, it's not easy to do this while holding a camera at the same time. But nonetheless, that is looking good. It's nice and thick, which is what we want for this type of Welsh rarebit. So, we've got some toast, some chili and cheese bread here that we've put in under the grill. Both sides, always got to do both sides. And we're just spooning over some of this cheese mix. Like so. And then this would just go under the oven for a couple of minutes, high heat, just to really cook it in.
but I want to make sure the cheese sauce is all over the toast. There we go. Let's get that under the grill. Well, that has been under the grill for a few minutes, not long, and now all we got to do is a final step. We just make these little incisions all over this. There is a reason for this. We might have needed to make this a little bit cooked a little bit more, but hey hey, that's where we're at. Before we eat this, it needs a couple of minutes to cool because it is piping hot at the moment. What we do, we take some Worcestershire sauce again and splash it all over this. There we go. Now to find out just how it tastes. So let's find out what it tastes like. So good. So good. I know this is just posh cheese and toast, but boy, it really does make your cheese and toast to another level. Welsh rarebit, great on these cold, wet, windy days for lunch. Love it, love it, love it. Got to do this more often. And the rest of the sauce we can actually keep in the freezer, ready for another day. Right, back to the studio. Oh, that's 9.5 out of 10.
Oh, what do we want? That. There we go. Welsh rarebit. Absolutely delicious. I haven't had that for so long. It was so nice to eat that for yeah. I had that for lunch and it was just so nice. I haven't had it for a long time. I think it was Digwell who suggested that last week, and yeah. Say that. Right, where were we? Ballysin says, that's okay, Digwell. If it's something isn't good enough, you say so, which I appreciate. Rob says, can use it as your weekly rent. Yeah, trouble is I don't watch enough of it to get angry about it. I mean, I just suddenly realised while I was showing that I've been writing notes in this real soil company notebook that was given as a marketing thing with their pen as well. It's not really that interesting to most people, but it's useful when I'm using it. What have we got? Digwell says, cheers, buddy. Yes, a few indoor hydros have been slated by me, LOL. Again, that's the whole point of stuff being sent to you for testing, isn't it? Rob says, all I have been offered is shoes, watering system, and cheap, nasty lights. I said, no thanks to all. Yeah. Digwell says, baked cheese, cause poor in Wales, a staple for the poor who couldn't afford meat, leading to the derogatory English term Welsh rabbit morphed into rarebit as it became posher. So I did a lot of research on this because I thought that, but as it turns out, there's actually no recorded evidence that it was a derogatory term. It's just something that has been believed. It's really fascinating, actually, when I was looking into this. No actual reason why it was called Welsh rabbit is written down or is recorded. It was believed to be a bit of a derogatory term from the English to sort of slight the Welsh with. But who knows? One around then. Rob says, I love cold cheese on toast. Digwell says, my latest was nail varnish UV system. How did they know you use nail varnish? I've had that actually on Instagram. Things like nail varnish and other items that I wouldn't use. Looks great. Love the crunch. Absolutely. Laughing. You would look good with nail varnish on. Digwell, it took me a while to figure out what nail varnish is. I think we call it nail polish. Yeah, same thing, I think, but I don't know. I don't know what the difference is. Right, so I've got another question I want to ask everybody. I think we've exhausted, but I'm going to summarize what we've talked about with the greenhouses. Is that I think if you can afford a greenhouse or polytunnel, buy the best, and you want to get one, buy the best you can afford. You will not regret it. That's my summarizing. I think they are well worth the investment. But if you've got any questions or anything that you want to know to try and help, if you are on the fence about getting a greenhouse or polytunnel, then please do throw it down in the comments and we'll see what we can ask it. For me, a greenhouse is more work. It does need more watering. It does need human interaction quite regularly through the growing season to make sure your plants don't dry out or get too hot and so on. And if you're going away on holiday, somebody has to think about who's going to be looking after your plants in the greenhouse while you're away. There is all that to think about because they're not going to get water from outside or unlikely to. But at the same time, as I said, I think they are well worth the investment. Is my summary. Earlier crops, protected crops, some crops you could only grow in a polytunnel or greenhouse. Just lots and lots of things to like. But I'm going to ask everybody out there now as well a slightly different question. What potatoes are you going to be growing this year? Going to give somebody a plug, actually. The Digwell's single seed potato challenge is live. I've got to participate myself. I've got to send the money over by postage and packaging. I was going to say, Digwell, I'll send you the money over. But if you want to if you're able to give me the potato at Garden Press event, if that saves you some money, then please do feel free to do that. But what potatoes are you growing this year? Turbo Stream says, I'm still on the fence. Are we greenhouse polytunnels? I can't yet justify the expense. Digwell says, tomatoes, rutabaga, swede, basil. All the differences, yeah. All the differences in the English language, isn't it? All the differences. I meant to say, over on Instagram, we've got Geraldine Folly joined and Kelpie Media 2025 joined. Let's see. Amanda is growing Ulster Prince, as that's what my granddad grew. Interesting. I've never heard of that variety. I've ordered my potatoes from Simply Seed. Actually, I found the price. I can't remember if I've mentioned this to you. Found the price on Simply Seed to be very reasonable. But what I also liked is I ordered them and I can book in when I want them to arrive. So I've not actually got mine arriving until the end of this month. And that felt quite good to me because I haven't got to worry about trying to find somewhere to keep them cool but light so they don't chit and things like that. They're going to arrive just before I need to get them planted out. Rob says, Cara, Wilger, Sintanta, Sharps Express. Anna Jones says, just Kestrel. Ballycillian, White Duke of York and Charlotte. And Jamie, International Kidney, if I can find any. I should be able to find them. Should be able to find them quite easily. They're quite a common one, although last year might have been a bad year for potatoes. I don't know. I think we've said that every year for the last few years, though. Tyro Stream says, not planning on growing spuds this year. I don't eat that many. Fair enough. What have we got? Idaho says, first year in a while, I'm not going to grow potatoes. Cutting back on starch veg, just not eating them so much. Fair enough. Digwell, potatoes, Skywalker, Java, Conda, Charlotte. Cutting back this year. No exhibition ones this year. No exhibition ones now. And Amanda, Ulster Prince as a first early, he swore by them. I'm trying to remember what I've ordered now because I didn't really make a note of that. But I've got, I know we've got some King Edwards and we've got some Maris Piper as the main crops. We've got, I've got some, I think I've got some international kidney I've ordered. I've ordered 8 different varieties, basically 2 earlies, 2 second earlies, 2 main crops, and 2 salad potatoes. Salad potatoes are probably going to grow at home in buckets, but the rest are going to be in beds down on the allotment. I didn't want to grow so many potatoes this year, if I'm honest. I was trying to cut back on them, but I couldn't help it. Just couldn't help it. I really want to be better with the main crops, though. That's something I really want to be better at doing, is the main crops and getting those stored for the winter. Digwell says, if the SSPC 2026 arrives before the 17th of February, then yes, I'll bring them to GPE. Thank you very much. I will send you an email, whatever. Stuart says, not got my potatoes yet, but probably only a main crop this year. Interesting. I think this year, last year, because it was so dry, I do think potatoes have suffered a bit. I was quite lucky. My potato crops turned out rather well. And I think that is because I grew them in the ground, but I just covered them in so much straw as a mulch that they just laughed through the wet weather. They just seemed to cope with it without any problem. But if you have got your seed potatoes, if you have got your potatoes, are you going to be chitting them or not? Next question. Are you going to chit your potatoes or not? And this is a question or something that comes up every single year, whether it's worth chitting or not. For me, I've always believed that if I have my potatoes now, they're going to start to chit regardless of what I do. So I like to try and control it, which is why I put them in the greenhouse or in the potting shed, somewhere where they get plenty of light but still stays quite cool. That way, if any chits do come, they're not going to be weedy. They're not going to be anything like that. They're going to be short and stumpy and thick. That's the main reason that I would put them out to chit. Stuart says school will be growing 2 buckets of salad potatoes and 2 buckets of main crops. Excellent. Jamie, be good to meet you at the press event. Yep, I will be there. I've been every year since 2019. I think the only year I didn't go was when it was online during COVID, 2021, I think it was. But yeah, go every year. I love the event. I love the event. It's good to see people as well. Toby Clark over on Instagram, sorry, wasn't going to grow spuds this year. Now I'm chitting rockets. I just couldn't resist. Yeah. Chili Cakes is Java and Charlotte from the allotment site shop. How is the allotment site shop going on? Because I believe you shared a photo of the building going up. Or did I imagine that? Idaho says, if I was going to grow potatoes, I would chit them. I always chit mine, says Anna. Rob says, I was only going to grow second earlies, but wife said we need more main crop. Again, I have to admit, I was thinking along the same lines. The first earlies are great, but the second earlies don't always get harvested in time because we're still eating the first earlies, and then the main crop suffers. So I want more main crops, but I want to do it right this year. Stuart says, I will plant my potatoes straight into the ground at home, but at school we will probably chit them. Excellent. Digwell, International Kidney, Jersey Royals, poor harvest again this year, so very limited supply. Doesn't surprise me. Last year was so dry. I mean, I did okay, but that's because they were mulched about 2 foot with straw, and my potatoes just did well. The only reason I chit, says Ballysoon, is to stop them chitting on their own. That's the same as what I do. In the bag, then break off when opening the bag. Yeah, same as me. It's to control the chit rather than to encourage it to chit. Yeah, he goes every year. It takes me a good deal of time avoiding him every week this year. I still find you, Digwell. I will still find you. Anybody else going to Garden Press event? I know it's a difficult one to discuss because it's not open to the public as such. It's more for media press people. But if anybody else is going, let us know. Let us know. Stuart says, just a little reminder, like, share, and subscribe, etc. Yeah, please do like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to click the notifications so that you know when we go live. So quite a few of us are growing potatoes this year. Has anybody started thinking about preparing the beds? I popped down to my allotment yesterday and I took my strimmer down. I have been growing my green manures in my potato beds over winter. So I've cut all those green manures down to ground level. And then what I'm going to be doing is leaving those green manures to rot down. I covered them over with a bit of compost, and then we're going to be adding a load more planted potatoes in, build up the compost as well, build it up, but straw as a mulch. I know I've gone on a lot about using straw as a mulch. It's just worked so well for me last year. Rob says, as it happened, I had some potatoes from Jamieson's today. Excellent. And Chili Cake, the shop is not finished, but looking amazing. One big wooden hut with the shop, storage, and toilet. We've also had new roads and proper parking area. It looks fantastic. Awesome. Awesome. I have to, I'll have to pop down and have a look one day when I'm, don't go down your way so much, but I have to make a trip down there. What have we got? Turbo Stream says, my allotment is saturated, so no chance of doing anything down there. I have parsnips to I have parsnips to harvest if they haven't rotted off. Everywhere is saturated at the moment. We spent most of 2025 praying for rain. We seem to have got it all in the last few weeks. Since we've got into winter, we need more. We need some dry days, but we need rain at the same time. Digwell says, seed potatoes. All I've done is gather a few egg boxes and buy the spuds so far. Yeah, where are you getting your? Excuse me. Where are you getting your potatoes from? Where are you getting your potatoes from? As I said, I got mine from Simply Seed. Normally, I would pop into a garden centre when I was passing. We've got quite a few garden centres, but there was one I particularly like because you would go and fill up a pot and you would get charged based on that. But because I'm not on the road as much like I used to be, I'm not able to get, or not so easy to get to these garden centres. So I've ordered online and it's actually worked out a little bit cheaper. Plus, easier to make sure I get what I want. Ballysian says, grow all in buckets. If they are in the road, I can move them. Freeze up beds for other crops. It's not a bad idea at all. Not a bad idea at all. Looking forward to the pics, Chili Kate. And Rob says, I would love to, but we are on holidays when it finishes. I would have to harvest them 6 weeks beforehand. Hey, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. We can... At the end of the day, it's all a bit of fun and see who does well. Well, here I am putting words into Digwell's mouth. I'm saying it's all a bit of fun, but actually, well, it is fun, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's all meant to be fun. By the way, we did the cook-along area earlier. I haven't set up, I've just realised I haven't set up the hashtags. But if anybody does want to suggest something we could cook next week or mission, as I said, I haven't been able to edit the mission videos for this week, which was to show you how I clean the greenhouses. Couldn't do that anyway. Tour of the greenhouses, which I have done. Make a mini greenhouse, which I have done. And sharpen secateurs, which I have done. But I wasn't able to edit those because my damn computer. But if anybody wants a mission for next week, throw it down, and we'll see who's the favourite. Toby says the range are doing good deals on potatoes now. Yes, I was in the range yesterday. I saw they got some good deals on potatoes. They've also got the what would you call them? Bare-rooted fruit trees, which are pretty cheap out as well. If you are looking for some cheap fruit trees, that might be the place to go. What were we saying? 90% of my seed spuds are saved from last year, but I had to buy a Charlotte from a garden centre as I ate them all. Yeah, I've saved seeds. That I've saved seed potatoes before quite successfully, and it's good, isn't it, when we can do that? It's good. They come true. Turbo Stream says, I went to a garden centre this week to try and get some John Innes number 3. They didn't have any, so I ended up at B&Q. Why do I feel somebody else has told me about that? Why did you need specifically John Innes number 3 as well? Question I got asked there. Jameson's was doing free delivery last week on potatoes. I've not heard of Jameson's. Are they a good supplier? Bally says, I get mine from Patch Potatoes. As you're aware, can't get them from the mainland. Yes. That's a bugger, isn't it? Can't get them from the mainland. Timely sorted it all out. Indeed. Gary, I've saved a few potatoes from last year. My first time trying to save seed potatoes. I've done it before. It can be very successful. You've just got to be careful. Digwell says hash free is only a formula, not a. Oh, John Innes number 3 is only a formula, not a compost. The compost can be anything with John Innes number 3 additions, so you can end up with good or bad depending on the base. Yeah, it's a grade, isn't it? It's yeah. Rob says, I have had some potatoes for seed, but the wife found them and cooked them. Yeah. Jameson's are sponsoring the SSPC 2026. There we go. I've not heard of Jameson's before, so as I was saying earlier about marketing, I've not heard of Jameson's before, and now I have heard of them. Now it is time for Richard's rant or rave of the week, and I'm going to have a bit of a rant, and it's one of these rants that nobody's going to be able to solve. I've had a bit of a moan about it, and I think you have all joined me in moaning about it as well. Rain, bloody rain. Will it stop raining? The ground is saturated in most places. It is horrible. The ground needs to dry out. We just need a bit of dry to dry the ground out. Now, as I said, we spent most of 2025 moaning about it being dry, and now we have got more rain than what we need, than what we can do with. We of course need rain. We need it to fill up our reservoirs. We need it to do the things, soak into the ground. But we're like in our allotment, and walking around. Where it's not soaking into the ground, it's making the ground very slippery and dangerous. I was walking Roxy on Friday, went for a lovely walk, but we came through this green, and as we came out the other end, it was slippery. I slipped over and straight through, breaking it in half, a fence of the house that ran alongside this green. I wasn't very popular. I popped in and told them, but I wasn't very popular. We just need it to dry out for a bit. So that's my rant of the week. Has anybody got anything that they want to rant about or rave about from this week? Turbo Stream says, I wanted John Innes number 3 transplanting my raspberries into containers for more permanent planting. The general composts are rubbish these days. Composts are. They are. But you could make your own mixes up if you've got a space. I guess that will be the thing. Rob says, I get on well with Jameson's, to be honest. I've never heard of them, so this is something I'm learning today. Growing Beside the Atlantic has joined over on Instagram. Welcome along. Hope you are well. Stuart says, I'm thinking of using some potatoes from the supermarket and testing them against seed potatoes. This is with the children. I did that last year. It works. It does work, but just got to be careful because seed potatoes have got certificates to say they are good. Kate is there. I'm desperate to get out into the garden. Hello. I don't think I'd seen you earlier. Lovely to see you. Yeah, I'm desperate to get out in the garden. I've done bits, but I'm desperate to get out properly in the garden. What's the weather like next weekend? What's it predicted to be next weekend? Let's have a quick look. Rain for the next week. Digwell says they also sell JBA Blight Guard. As you know, I've not had blight for 4 years, despite my plot neighbours being inundated with blight, tomatoes and spuds. JBA Blight Guard. I'll get it out there. Digwell swears by. Rob says, I tried it 1 year with some rooster spuds from a co-op, got nothing out. Interesting. Stuart says, I would like to moan about the price of compost. $7.99 for 40-litre bag. Yeah, compost is getting has been getting expensive for the last few years. But on that note, what isn't getting expensive? Everything seems to be getting expensive. Everything has been getting expensive, and it's really, really annoying. It's inflation and stuff, but it's bad. It's bad. Things need to drop in price if people are going to use them. Kate says, sorry, I'm quieter than usual. Been a rough couple of weeks, but getting in the garden will help. Hope everything's okay, Kate. You know where we are if you need anything. And Rob says, can't you get a few people together and buy a pallet load? You'll get some great deals. It's one way around it, but it's still got expensive, hasn't it? Can I moan about everything? Well, yeah, if you so wish. If you so wish. I think now it is time that we also have a look. If I bring this up correctly, let's have a look at your photos. So first of all, Nathan, he's got his young seedlings all under the grow lights. I can see onions, there's chilies and peppers, all looking really good, actually. Looking fantastic, I have to say, and very, very healthy. Scott has just seen my spelling mistake, sowing his first seeds of the year. A lot of vermiculite used in that as well, which is good. By the way, I'll talk about this in a minute, actually, but good to see some seeds being sown. Connor in Japan has been busy sowing seeds as well. This made us laugh when we saw this because he's in Japan, originally from Portsmouth in the UK, sowing Spanish seeds. Absolutely brilliant. Chili's first of the month plot shot. As you know, I try and encourage you on the first of every month, take a plot shot, excuse me, take a photo of your allotment, your garden, and so you can see how it changes. We're going to pull it together at the end of the year as a bit of a slideshow. We've done it for the last couple of years with some of you. We want more of them. We want more of them. Digwell's chilies and peppers are well underway, although he's noticed some of his sweet potato peppers are a little bit behind. But good germination rates, Jiffy 7's being used, and all looks fantastic. He's also found these bargains at your local Tesco's. These are the bare-rooted fruit trees I was talking about earlier. You've got some cherries and apples, pears, and so on. Well worth getting down to Tesco's. If you do want to save some money, these are a cheap way of getting some fruit trees. Now, Bonnie has got her seed potatoes chitting on the windowsill. I think there's 8 varieties there. Looking good indeed. Now, please do keep sharing your photos. Post in our Facebook group, send to me via social media, or email me, Richard at the Veg Grower Podcast. Now, I was going to tell you a bit of a story about the vermiculite, which reminded me. So, perlite. Oh, hang on. Let me make it myself. There we go. That's what I wanted to do. Perlite vermiculite. You can buy it from a garden centre, and 10 litres in somewhere like a garden centre is £10. Is cheap enough, I think, to buy, easy enough to get hold of, and so on. But I now get mine from Amazon. This is a bit of a rant, bit of a rave. I get mine from Amazon. The reason being, I can get 100 litres of perlite from Amazon for £25. Why would I buy 10? And it's the same with vermiculite as well. Why would I go to a garden centre and pay £10 for something that I get less of? It's just a bit crazy to me. So if you do need perlite or vermiculite, check out Amazon. Seriously, check out Amazon. I've read that one. Read that one. I am suffering from cabin fever too. I think we all are. Ballycillian says, Stuart, it's the same as buying plug plants. Always a chance of bringing a disease into your plot. Talking about what we were saying earlier. Dahlia679 has joined over on Instagram as well. Gary says, cook along all this potato talk. How about Hasselback potatoes for a recipe if your computer gets fixed? Hasselback recipe potatoes it is. Let me write that down. Hasselback potatoes. Could do with a mission, of course. Could do with a mission. I'm moaning about my own procrastination. Absolutely. And Chili Kate says, I tried Blight Guard last year, and no blight till very late. No idea if it was the weather, but love the smell. I've yet to try Blight Guard, so I'm probably going to give it a try this year. Digwell says, has anyone noticed the peat composts coming back into the garden centres? The peat ban still has back shelved for yet another 2 months. I can't say I've noticed, to be honest. I can't say I've noticed it, but a lot of my garden centres are only selling peat-free for a while now. So peat-based compost can be sold in some places, I think, but I've not seen it. Tomo Stream says, I wasn't going out in the rain. Excuse me. I wasn't going out in the rain to take my plot shot. Well, I want it for next week. Idaho says, excellent seedlings dig well. And Digwell says, not poor germination, 0 germination from the Heritage Seed Library seeds. Glad I have unsubscribed my membership. I will be having words at GPE. Are they going to be at GPE? Interesting. I'll have a chat. Rob says, I've not been in a garden centre for ages, but have noticed more supplies it now. Yeah, there we go. Jamie says, thanks for the perlite tip, Richard. Seriously, it's ridiculous price in garden centres, in my opinion. I buy 100 litres. It will last me a couple of years, but 100 litres for 25 quid is nothing, is it? I looked at lettuce seeds in the garden centre, £4 a packet. What a racket. Hey, that vibes. You're a poet and you didn't even know it. Digwell says, even cheaper on eBay as the fees are lower and most sellers pass this on. I haven't checked eBay, to be honest. I can sometimes get a little bit worried about buying stuff on eBay, but yeah. And Chili Cake says, buy per litre from the allotment shop. How much is it per litre from the allotment shop? Genuine question. Must be Lord Charles seeds. No, I think all seeds are around that price now in the garden centre. Again, everything's got a lot of money. Rob says, I just bought 100 litres of perlite off Amazon for 25 quid. Same as me. Ordered it yesterday and it arrived. Stuart says, a mission, mix your own compost. Mix own compost. Okay. I can do a little video on that, actually, because that's a good one to talk about. Digwell says, Blue Diamonds, British Garden Centres and Dobbies are all stocking it. There we go. Should you get 35p a litre? So that's like £35 for 100 litres. That's a good price again. Good price indeed. Not sure they would, but Lord Charles would be excellent value. There we go. I've just realised it is 7:30. We got carried away. I think we have done everything, but it is time now. Get out of here, pack up for the day, and go on. Thanks so much for joining me at this time on a Sunday. We will be back next Sunday at 6. I don't know what we're going to talk about, I'll be honest with you. I had a few subjects. And actually, compost mixes might be a good subject. Let's talk about compost mixes. I know that's to do with the mission, but let's talk about compost mixes for next week and how we could potentially save money by mixing our own composts. Anyway, it is 7:30. It's time to get out of here. Thanks so much for joining me. Next week, we're going to talk about compost mixes. I'm going to be mixing my own composts, and we're going to be cooking Hasselback potatoes. Looking forward to this one. Right, guys, you take care. I'll see you again next Sunday at 6 p.m. where we'll do it all over again. Until then, please take care.